Hello YouTube, Silent S here with the Canon A-1 Advanced SLR produced between 1978 and 1985 in Japan. This is the first SLR available with an electronically controlled programmed auto exposure feature. That is to say that in certain settings the camera will select both the aperture setting and the shutter speed for you. Despite the fact that it has this automatic mode, it's still a very powerful manual camera, allowing you to do anything you can do with any other analog SLR. Let's just take a look at some of the features of the camera here. Over on this side, we have the exposure compensation. Hold down this lock button to move between 4 times and 1/4 exposure compensation. Over here, we have the ASA selector. ASA is the American Standards Association, which later became ANSI, but in this case it's essentially a precursor to ISO, or it was the film speed of the time. Select your film speed based on what film you're using, or if you're fancy, select a different film speed than the film you're using. Over here we have the viewfinder display lever. On is this way. That will display the information in the viewfinder. What you'll find there is the aperture and shutter speed settings, along with some other information. Flip it over here to off, turn off the internal display. If you're a purist, you don't like the LED characters glaring at you. In the center of that lever is the battery check button. Press it down. The faster this LED flashes, the more charge you've got left in your battery. Side note, this marker displays the exact location of the film plane. That is, the film is exactly underneath this mark. This is important in photomicrography, where you need to know the exact distance between the film plane and your subject. Up here we have the hot shoe mount for the flashes, the central contact for the flash synchronization, and the 2 contacts for the automatic flash system from Canon. Over here we have our auto exposure mode selector. It goes from TV or time value to AV or aperture value. We would know these as shutter priority and aperture priority. Our shutter speeds can go between 1/1000th of a second down to 30 seconds. Also available is B for bulb mode. We'll show that a little bit later. And up here to P for program. We'll also get to that a little bit later. Our apertures go from f/22 down to f1.2, which is the dot below 1.4 there. This is our shutter cocking lever. This is the multiple exposure lever. Up here is essentially the on-off switch. A is on, L is lock. The shutter button will not work in lock. These 2 settings, 2 and 10, are the self-timer, 2 seconds and 10 seconds respectively. So 2-second timer, push the button, light flashes, takes a photo, 2 seconds later. 10 seconds, same thing. Pretty self-explanatory. On the back here we have the Memo Window, where you would take the little piece of the film cartridge packaging that shows the ISO or ASA number in this case, so that you know what film you're using in this camera. So you could have like 3 or 4 cameras on your chest and you know which one has which film that you want to use. This is the serial number of this camera, if you want to see it. And there it is. On the bottom we have the standard tripod mount, the film rewind button. This little cover comes off. It's a plug. It allows you to access the drive for the film, so that you can add the automatic film drive accessories, the power drive and the motor drive, or the 2 available for this camera, that allow you to automatically advance the film using an electric motor. These contacts are also for those units, the power drive and the motor drive. On the front here we have this grip. This is removable using this little screw here. Underneath the grip is the battery door. This camera takes standard 6-volt 4LR44 batteries. Pretty cheap nowadays, actually. This is a manual lock for the exposure setting wheel, the shutter and aperture. Just push it up and you can't move that wheel. Over here we have the plug for the PC socket. The PC socket has two main uses. The first one for synchronizing flashes that were not compatible with Canon's automatic flash system, and also for the data back, which was a piece that replaced the entire back of the unit and allowed you to imprint date codes and other custom information onto the film negative as you took photos. Over here we have some important features. This is the stop down lever. This is up here on the top is the exposure preview button. That does essentially the same thing as holding the shutter release down halfway. That is, it will turn on the display in the viewfinder. Although the reason that we have two ways to do this is if you were to use pushing down halfway on the shutter release, you might accidentally slip and expose a piece of negative. Whereas if you use this button to preview your exposure settings, you do not risk exposing any expensive film. The button below the exposure preview is the exposure lock. The exposure lock button is important, for instance, in scenes where perhaps you're taking a photo of a subject against a sunset. So if you were to use the normal auto exposure modes and just take the photo, you would get a photo of the sunset and the subject, but the subject would be in shadow. What you can do with the exposure lock button is hold it down close to the subject and just meter the exposure of the subject itself. Then you step back while still holding the exposure lock button, take the photo, and then you will get the sunset in the background, but you will also be able to see the face of the subject because the exposure has been locked for the exposure of the subject, not the sunset. On the front, we have the body cap. Let's remove that and put on a lens. This is the zoom lens. Remove the cap from the lens. What we're going to do is take the red dot on the lens, line it up with the red dot on the body of the camera, twist, and mount the lens to the camera. That looks beautiful. On this lens, the upper ring focus, lower ring is zoom, and the bottom ring is the aperture ring. This lens does have a macro mode. Take this macro lever, lift it up, kick it into the macro zone, kick it back up to go back to regular zoom operation. These are Canon FD lenses. The important thing about these is they have the A mode on the aperture ring. The A mode allows the camera body to control the aperture of the lens. So if we go here to shutter priority and go all the way up to P, what's going to happen is the camera is going to select both the aperture setting and the shutter speed for you based on the light metering coming through the lens. This is the fully automatic mode of the camera, and it's one of the reasons this camera was revolutionary for its time. Now that we have a lens on, we can look at the stop down lever. So the stop down lever is here. Generally speaking, when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're only going to see the camera with its maximum aperture. If you want to see the aperture you've selected by manually moving the aperture ring, you have to engage the stop down lever. Just push it in, it will lock. Perhaps we can see this. So there's the viewfinder, and there's, well, we have to cock the shutter there. So now you can see the aperture changing, which is only available if you're using the stop down lever. Sometimes if you use the stop down lever and you don't take a photo before switching back to automatic mode, it will lock up the camera. To alleviate this issue, simply use the multiple exposure lever and take a photo. I had it on timer, and that will reset the mechanical workings of the camera. Let's open the back cover of the camera to reveal the cloth focal plane shutter. I know you want to touch it, but don't do it. Don't get those oils on that shutter. With the back open, we can look at the multiple exposure lever. So usually when we cock the shutter, we also advance the film. Notice these cogs moving to advance the film. Okay. Advancing the film. Good. Now, if we use the multiple exposure lever and cock the shutter, notice these cogs do not move. So you can take multiple exposures on the same negative location. The manual does state that after several many multiple exposures, you will get some drift in the negative, but you really shouldn't be taking that many multiple exposures anyways. The back cover does remove using this small lever here. That will come off. That's so that you can put on different backs, like, as I said before, the data back. That's about all there is to the camera. Let's show you bulb mode. The name for bulb mode comes from the old squeeze bulbs that were used for trigger releases back in the early days of photography. So if we cock the shutter, we can hold on the button. The shutter will stay open as long as I hold down the shutter release. There, see? So that's useful. Also hidden behind the eyepiece here is the viewfinder shutter. It's a little switch here. You activate it, and there's a shutter that goes over the viewfinder. This is important in very long exposure photos where you might risk light leaking down through the viewfinder onto the film negative. So if you want to avoid that, just activate the viewfinder shutter. Let's just take a look at one more lens. To release the lens, hold this silver button, rotate in the reverse direction that you did to put the lens on. Always replace the cap on the lens. This is the telephoto lens. Take the cap off. Same procedure. Take the red dot on the lens, mate it with the red dot on the camera body. Rotate, and we're locked. This one, up and down for zoom, rotate to focus. Pretty simple. Again, we have the aperture ring. Set it to A for automatic, or choose your aperture here in manual mode. It's a great camera. It's a powerful camera. And the most important part about this camera is that the lenses are super cheap. I'm talking like $25 a lens. So you can get the entire set for relatively cheap compared to lenses for more modern cameras. Let's just take a quick look at the reflex lens. Let's put our shutter setting a little bit faster. Notice that this camera does have a little bit of shutter squeak. That's a misnomer. It is not the shutter that's squeaking. It's actually the bearing for the reflex mirror. If you're interested in seeing me repairing the shutter squeak, let me know. I might do a video. If you're going to use this camera in everyday operation, you don't want to operate it with the shutter squeak because it can cause lasting damage to the bearing. So just if you're going to use it, fix it. There are a lot of YouTube videos showing you how to fix that problem. It's relatively simple. If you like this video, if you found it interesting, please leave a comment, give me a like. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you, YouTube. Enjoy your day.